is Untapped with ME, and I am ME with friends. I'll be introducing these guys. Welcome! Today we are doing what we always do on my podcast, and that is I tell crazy stories about me and my life in Nacogdoches, Texas. They know all the secrets about me. And I like to drink a beer. As you know, this is Hop Unity Special Red Edition. I tried to get these guys to have beer with me. They are really good guys. They do not drink beer. We're going to talk about what they're drinking in just a second. But here it is. You're going to want some here. Does this make you want it, Dan?
Not yet.
So this is a West Coast IPA. I think most people don't like the beers that I talk about.
Or the West Coast.
Thank you.
See, my brother would love them. My brother would love them.
Your brother would love it. Okay. Or the West Coast.
He's a fellow traveler.
Ah, I see. Okay. Well, he's not here to comment, so I will just have to tell everybody. A West Coast IPA means that it is kind of clear. See that? Mm-hmm. And it's not all fuzzy. But everybody knows I like the hazy IPA, and it's clear, and it doesn't taste malty, which means you're like tasting a fistful of foam. So not that. Let me have a little. You want some, Jerry?
No, thank you.
Well, I promise y'all it's good. So I'm going to introduce these guys, but let's talk about what you're drinking. Jerry, what are you drinking?
Well, I'm drinking my usual Dr. Pepper Zero.
Zero. What does that mean?
It means it's without sugar.
No calories.
So what is the fun in that?
It has a sweetener. It doesn't have sugar.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. Being
all
good.
All the flavor, none of the guilt.
Jerry injured over here, y'all. Again, I'm going to tell you about who these people are, but
right.
Jerry had an accident. What's wrong with your leg, Jerry?
Huh?
What did you do to your ankle there?
I didn't do anything. Just as Dan says, I'm gotten older.
So he's had surgery.
I had to have a little ankle surgery. So I can't put any weight on it right now, but I'll be good coming March.
He's on a scooter. No shame in that. He's doing fine. He scooted right on over here. And then, Dan, what are you drinking?
I am drinking Diet Mountain Dew.
Ooh, yeah, okay. All right.
Which
that's
is
your
the
thing.
nectar of the gods.
The nectar. It is now that's the only thing you can drink, right? If you can't have beer, yeah, you love it. Okay, excellent. So who are these people? Of course, we've had Jerry on here before, so Jerry, remind everybody, just what is your connection to Nacogdoches murder and crime?
Well, I worked for Jack Pierce.
I've heard of him.
A little bit. For about 28 and a half years. Mm-hmm. And then I worked for Cam Cox another 13 and as the court reporter. I was in pretty every major trial from 1972 to 2013, Halloween.
Is a lot.
A lot of trials.
But Dan, you were there too, so remind me when you started. You had a lot of different titles there.
Well, first of all, I came into the Nacogdoches County family through your father. Your father was the first judge I worked for as a probation officer. And I worked there for 4 years, and I really wanted to work with the prosecutor's office, so I got a job with the incoming district attorney, who was Herbert Hancock, and he was that was in '77, so I started then, and I worked with him for 5 years. And then subsequently came in for a brief period of time with a friend of mine was elected district attorney for another 2 years. So I've got about 7 years as an investigator with the district attorney's office. And I started in, 77. First stint was 77 through 82.
Okay. All right. And you guys have been friends for forever.
Since 73. Yeah.
Wow, that's something. Since 73. Oh, I was 10 years old. It's just nice to think about me being young.
I remember you very, very well. And I was thinking last night, I said, how old was Mary Elizabeth when I first met her? And I was thinking 11 or 12, but I was off a little bit.
Well, when you came to work, we had just gotten a grant for the first probation department in Nacogdoches County from a DETCOG. That's how that was created. and I helped Judge Pierce get that grant from DECCON.
Oh, that's really cool. That's a neat detail. And you're I was a little girl, but just so everybody understands, I knew these men very, very well because just back then, again, Nacogdoches being a small town, these were people that were in our home all the time. We had parties. I'd come up to the courthouse just as a little girl. So just growing up, these are people that I knew. And then just oddly enough, as my life went on, we connected in so many unexpected ways. I mean, I taught Jerry's kids. Dan, you and I knew each other in a way we don't have to go into. I was not on probation, but somebody I knew was on probation. And I was like, oh, okay, hello. Anyway, so just our lives have connected in a lot of different ways. But today we're going to be talking about a story. I'm calling it Sex and Money. Now, they may be wondering why I'm calling, money, obviously, but you know why I'm calling it sex, why I have that in the title?
Yeah.
There's some sexy things. Sexy. He was a sexy man. I thought they were going to disagree. But and his wife, a lot of people thought she was sexy. Anyway, it's the story of Willie Foster Sellers, and this is a big deal. It's part of our series here for Murder and Crime in Nacogdoches, Texas. This is a crime. It was a huge bank robbery, and of course, we've got the other two stories out so that you can watch those and learn more about the actual story in terms of the robbery. But these guys are going to talk about all sorts of things concerning their part. Let's pick up with the robbery was in 1978 in Chirino. Do y'all remember that?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, talk to me.
Well, initially, I mean, it was a big deal. They started, or it turns out that the FBI had sent out flyers to game wardens with pictures of Sellers and Powell. And they knew, they had intelligence indicating through informants that they were headed this way and they were going to do small town banks where you don't have a big law enforcement presence. And so they knew who they were. I mean, it was 10 minutes after the robbery. They knew who it was.
Because they had all the hallmarks of the same way that they've been robbing all throughout the South?
Yes, and I mean, you couldn't have identified them because they had on ski masks, but they it was known who they were, and so the FBI swooped in. Everybody came in, everybody participated in it. They had a little command post out there, and they had people that were stopping traffic. I mean, it was really a big deal, and they had. They knew they were in the area. They physically had to be still in the area.
Well, that had to be scary for everybody around here. Like, two men on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list.
Right.
Running around here somewhere. Yeah.
At least they thought they were here.
Okay, right. But they could have been, right? I mean, they could have shown up at somebody's house.
Well, they were here, but
for a short time.
Weren't here for very long.
right. Okay, right. So, walk me through that a little bit, Jerry. When that was going on, the robbery and what you're learning, and
well, they robbed the bank and they had stolen a vehicle from a Memorial Hospital, and they had been scouting the place out for some time. They had scanners of all the radio frequencies for all the law enforcement, and they robbed the bank and they took off, and little did they know, they thought that the deputy assigned to that area would be in town that day because he always went to town, but that particular day he didn't. He stayed in Chirino, and when the alarm went off, he was actually on their trail, and they ended up ditching the car and getting in another car, and then everything was shutting down on all the roads, and so they had to ditch the car. And they ditched the car and walked through the woods, across all the way to Highway 21, where they went to the SFA experimental forest barn there and stowed one of their vehicles. And they were able to leave the town of Nacogdoches and got to Mount Enterprise. And they got on a payphone, which you don't see those now.
No. Some people won't know what that is. Yes.
They called Sellers' wife, who knew how to fly a plane, and he had his own plane, and they were in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and she flew the plane to Tyler, Poundsfield, And they drove to Pounds Field with a pickup and met her there, and that's how they got their escape.
I'll tell you something that happened, and I bet you Jerry doesn't remember this. He might. That day, after they robbed the bank, they had taken off down this old dirt road, and for some reason they wanted to stop and do whatever. Well, they stopped at a church. They pulled in beside this church, or at the rear of a church. Well, at about the same time, this 17-year-old kid was in a big old Chrysler, and at that time it was pretty common practice for a lot of times for deputies, especially in the rural areas like that, to use their own car. Mm-hmm. And they didn't have clearly marked police car, all that. Right. Well, he had this old Chrysler, and he had a bunch of CV equipment. He had aerials just all over the place. Well, he thought, that's odd. I don't remember seeing that car around here. And so he pulls in within probably 20 yards of where they are just to see what they're up to. Well, they saw him, and they thought, this is some old constable or something that has come out here and he's getting ready to call us radio in. Well, they get out. One of them gets out. I don't know which one it was, and had a 12-gauge pump shotgun, and he pointed right at where the kid is, and fired a shot into that windshield. It hit it at a weird angle and didn't even penetrate the windshield. It went up into the molding.
Wow.
Crazy.
And of course the kid then realized, hey, this is getting real serious. And so he backs out and takes off. But he came that close to having his head literally blown off.
Wow.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And they would not hesitate to kill you. Those guys were killers.
Yeah, that's what's scary about it. Yeah, I'm glad you made that point, that they weren't just bank robbers. I mean, they had a long history of being involved with something that would be tangential to a murder. Okay.
Well, you can't be in that business for years and years and years, and in and out of all these different crimes and burglaries and escapes and all this kind of stuff without running into someone you suspect is an informant or this or that, and they ended up killing two people that they suspected as informants.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, so this serious business down here in Nacogdoches, let me tell you. So we went for a while without being able to find these folks, and then James Hoyt Powell was found. Jerry, I was showing you a picture of him a minute ago, and you said, "Yep, I remember him," because he was found and tried first. Do you want to share some recollections about that?
Well, all I know, when we plead cases, and that's what he did, actually pled guilty, and he was given a sentence in TDC. And when you do that, there's not a whole lot to it, so I don't remember a whole lot about that other than it just occurring.
Right.
It's not like actually going through a trial, a week-long trial.
Oh, I got you. Right.
So
yeah.
there wasn't a
good
whole
point.
lot to it, but-
Right. Understood. Okay.
And
but
I don't remember.
Go ahead.
I don't remember how he was caught.
They called. I can't remember either.
Yeah.
Maybe
Well,
you do.
okay. So. I only know some of these things because, of course, I drop deep into the research and listen to my dad tell stories. So the story that my dad told was that this is crazy, but the FBI had their photos. Every FBI agent in the South had these photos and were looking for these two, Willie Foster Sellers and his accomplice, James Hoyt Powell.
Right.
And I kid you not, the story I was told by my dad was this FBI agent pulls up to a red light in Dallas, Texas, and he looks over at the driver to his right, and it's James Hoyt Powell.
Yeah.
And he pulled him over and arrested him. His son was with him. He was all involved in crime too, and so and that's the story that I was told. And then Dan, you made a very long trip with James Hoyt Powell. Tell us about it.
Well, after he pled guilty and was sentenced, he was already in custody, in federal custody.
It escaped.
Yeah, and it escaped. But he was to be taken back to Atlanta and the facility there, which is a major federal prison. And so Don Griffith, Tom Strother, and I drove him immediately after basically after the plea, drove him 16 hours to that prison, and there were all these rumors that they were going to try to break him out and all this kind of
Because
stuff.
that was a pattern.
And
That
was
really
a
did
pattern,
happen.
and so they didn't. So no one wanted him sitting around for 3 or 4 days, and giving anybody an opportunity to try anything. So we jumped right in the car and drove up there, and quite honestly had the best time I've ever had with a
criminal.
With a criminal. And he was just such an entertaining fellow. He had a natural sense of humor, and we talked about things that they had done and places they'd served time and prison politics and just one thing after another. He was just an interesting guy, from the way on the other side of the tracks.
Yeah.
But he was, and when we got to the prison, he gave us a little short lecture. He got real serious, and he said, fellas, we've gotten along real well, and I like to consider you friends and everything, but let's say our goodbyes right now, because when we go in there and no one needs to see us glad-handed and slapping each other on the back.
Right, that wasn't going to do him any good, was it? No.
And so he said, that's a different world in there. Wow. He said, I'm going into a place where you don't get real chummy with law enforcement.
Right. No, I guess not.
And so anyway,
that's quite the thing.
Dropped him off and and then drove on back after I think we stopped and got a 3.5 hour nap somewhere.
It was a little bit longer then until they found Willie Foster Sellers. And, we talked about how the FBI was immediately down here. Yeah. Did you see them hanging around here, the FBI, the suits, the men in black?
I don't remember.
No,
I don't remember much in the search for him.
Yeah.
I do remember how they caught him, but I don't remember them being here because we were busy in court and other trials and things. And then when they caught him is when I remember a lot about the trial.
Right. But you might remember they did. I thought that they put up a bulletproof shield in front of Dad, something like that. Does that sound familiar?
No, I don't remember that.
No? Okay.
No.
Well, I had a big imagination maybe back then.
Yeah, I know during the trial they had given us a warning they were trying to break him out.
Yeah.
Right.
Somebody was, and I remember your dad telling me if something comes down in the courtroom, best thing you do is get down under your desk.
Oh, dang.
And,
that's an awfully little desk you said.
That's what I was thinking.
I told him I didn't think you needed to
Jerry
do
being
that.
so big, that was not going to work. He's tall, tall.
Yeah.
But that's hilarious. But, to talk about the real fear that existed, again, in the other podcast before this, if you'll go back, you can hear more about just the history of these men and how they were associated with the Dixie Mafia. And this was the real deal. And that a federal judge in San Antonio had just a few months earlier been assassinated by someone in the Dixie Mafia, of which these guys were part. This was really scary. And I was mentioning, Jerry, then do you remember, though, that the FBI came to our house and escorted Dad to work, and they escorted me and Rosemary, that's my little sister, and they escorted us to school.
Yeah, I remember that.
Do you know who killed that? As a side note, do you know who killed that judge?
I do.
Woody Harrelson's father.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Crazy, isn't it? I mean, this is a crazy story, but yeah, that's the truth. So anyway, okay, so Willie Foster Sellers is caught, but I want to make sure that we get to Agent Leon Blakeney, who was his nemesis, because he was in charge of all the searches for Willie Foster Sellers. And Dan tells me that he was called the Little Hitler. You want to tell me a little bit about
Well, that's what
why
the bad
and who
guys,
he was?
the bad guys called him Little Hitler. He was
the
just a
bad
real
guys.
tough, aggressive little guy. I say little guy. He was he was a very a powerfully built but short guy, and he was pure aggression, and he's the kind of guy you want to have dozens and dozens of these guys around. And but he was he got to one point where we were all, everybody was afraid of they were going to try to break him out, and there was really good intelligence indicating that was definitely they were going to attempt it. And Blakely was in on all of the planning sessions, and we had everything. We had across the street people set up over there. We had people all over the place, high-powered rifles, this and that. And someone was fretting about, well, gosh, I hope they don't try. And I remember old Blakely stood up. He said, my attitude is let them try it. He said, we're ready. He said, just come on, let's get it over with.
Oh, no. Oh, my goodness.
I mean, that was his
right,
approach.
bring it on.
Yeah. Just bring it. You take your best shot.
No, that's my daddy up there. I don't want any of this going on.
Yeah.
Did you feel any fear, Jerry? Because this was a very real thing. You knew that this was being talked about. We all did. We were all listening for the helicopters because the wife could fly and so forth. So yeah.
Well, I during the trial I wasn't really afraid. I mean, the courtroom was packed with DPS troopers that were plainclothes, rangers from everywhere, and I felt well protected. I wasn't really concerned about that. I mean, I was so involved at the trial itself and doing what I do, which takes a lot of concentration. But no, I mean, I did when we got the notice that might try to break him out of the trial or out, and they gave us a notice about it, and I would kind of watch the door a little more closely, when people come in and out.
Yeah.
But other than that, I wasn't real worried because I knew we were in good hands.
Okay, that's comforting to hear. So we bring Willie Foster Sellers to Nacogdoches. So I was kind of curious because, of course, when he was a young man, he's pretty good looking there, and the ladies did like him. Dan, you personally spent a lot of time with him, did you not?
I did.
And I just want to know your impression of him.
He was a guy that was my impression of him was very, very calculating, first of all, which should surprise nobody. He was trying to figure you out while he's talking to you, and he's trying to get a little more information. Trying to see if you're the type of guy that's going to be real loose-lipped and reveal a lot of stuff, or if you're someone that, he may need to keep an eye on, or whatever.
He's sizing you up.
Yeah, just sizing you up. That's a better way of putting it. And but he was a little bit on the creepy side because I knew about at that time I knew about one murder that he had committed when they killed someone that was suspected of being an informant for the FBI.
Yeah.
And they were an informant for the FBI. But anyway.
That was his accomplice, an accomplice's girlfriend. Is that the one?
No, this was a guy.
Else?
This was a guy that I think had participated in some of the robberies.
Yeah, and when I said the accomplice, I didn't mean James Hoyt Powell because Willie Foster Sellers would have a lot of different accomplices.
Yeah,
that was scary. So you found him a little creepy.
Yeah, I found him just a little unnerving.
Unnerving.
Is another way of putting it. He was a type of guy that tried to figure out a way to.
Well, when he came to court, he was in a suit, and he was well dressed, well groomed. And if somebody walked in and didn't know what was going on, they would probably thought he was a lawyer.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's what it looked like
yeah.
in the
And
trial.
that's amazing,
And,
really. To have that impression, that presentation.
Yeah, he I mean, that's just the way he was.
Well, he certainly came to represent himself. He asked if he
Right.
could, and he was granted permission. But I bet Dad knew all along that Lightfoot was going to shut that down because Lightfoot wouldn't let him have access to the law library because it was a danger, he said, because it was right next to Judge's chambers, which it was. So guess who represented Willie Foster Sellers?
Well,
Tom Semp.
Tom Pruitt Semp, yeah.
You always like to talk about him.
Oh, yeah. Tom.
Jerry and I were talking about him before you came over here, and I was talking about how much I missed Tom Self. What a unique, what a wonderful guy. I just love the guy.
Yeah, he was a great lawyer. He had a great mind. He was good.
Yeah.
Very eccentric. Eccentric as he could be. And your dad, Jerry and I, another thing we mentioned was that, he was the go-to guy. Your dad, when when there was a real difficult defendant, one that, like Sellers, he would, Tom would end up being appointed because he could handle him.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I remember that. He was kind of the lion tamer, I like to call
He
him.
was.
Yeah. And he did well in this trial. Do you do well? Let's see. How did this come out? So do we say he did well? No, we couldn't, because really in the end there was that ski mask, and that's pretty much, that hair in the ski mask really sealed the deal, didn't it?
Well, I don't know if it sealed the deal. I mean, it's just another little, it was another straw that was breaking the camel's back.
Right. Understood. Well, I want to, I'm such a sensationalist, so I'd like to get to when Mrs. Sellers, the day she came to testify, because everybody was really excited to see her. It sounds like the law enforcement were real excited because they were passing around a photo of the former showgirl, and you said you saw that photo.
I have it.
You have it? I can't wait. I'm going to get it.
Unless it's been misplaced or something, I have it.
She was topless.
She's topless.
So, Jerry, you said that when she came in, that was kind of a scene that she made. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it was the end of the day when the state rested their case, and the judge looked at Mr. Semp and asked him, "Are you ready to proceed?" And he asked for, more time, that he wanted to recess and go the next day. And of course, your dad and I said, just if you're going to call a witness, call your first witness. And he started explaining that his witness was at the airport, and apparently she had just flown in.
And by that you mean she flew in herself.
Yeah, I guess she flew the plane, or she took the plane. I don't know,
she did.
but she probably did. But anyway, and he said, well, she can come in, she can get a taxi or whatever. And she said, well, it's difficult to get a taxi out there from Nacogdoches. And he said, well, I'll just send a deputy in a deputy's car, and we'll get her. And so they did, and we waited. The jury waited in the jury box, and we all waited in the courtroom.
Oh, you waited the whole time?
We waited in the courtroom for them to go to the airport and bring her back. Mm-hmm. And then she got there, and Judge let her Tom to go out to the hall to visit with her for just a moment. Came back in and said, Judge, she's not appropriately dressed for the occasion.
Okay. What did that mean?
Well, he told her, he said, call your witness. It doesn't matter. And she didn't want to come in, and her hair was apparently in rollers or whatever. Okay. And she was dressed in, I think, pants or jeans or something. And anyway, she had to come in and testify. And tell you the truth, I don't remember her testimony. It wasn't very.
I don't either. I don't know if I was in there.
It wasn't very helpful to the defendant, if any. There was nothing much that she could give. I think. If I'm not, remind me, but wasn't Sellers diabetic?
Yes,
he was diabetic. Yeah, I think that was another issue that she testified about, the fact that he was diabetic, and that's he had a doctor in Florida, and that's where he had gone to get his medicine and get the part for the motorcycle, which you probably already told that. I don't know.
I did, but I like it. But I like to hear y'all tell the stories. I only know those stories because they told me, and they tell those stories so much better.
I think that's what killed him, Jerry. Eventually, was his
diabetes,
was complications from type 1 diabetes.
I thought he had cancer too.
Could have been all
It
that,
could
right?
have.
You know, just
It could have.
all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
he wound up being sentenced to a federal penitentiary. There was one in the Midwest that was maximum
Right.
security,
Yeah.
and
Well, that would have been Marion, Illinois.
that is exactly what it
Right.
was. Ding,
Yeah.
ding, ding. Very good.
Right.
And but he started chipping away at his time there, believe it or not, because as you said, what was that term you used for these people who are really good? They're incarcerated, but they're really good at studying the law and then
Jailhouse lawyer.
Yes, a
Jailhouse
jailhouse lawyer.
Yeah.
So he had represented himself more than once.
Oh, yeah,
and
many
he was
times.
up there, and he did chip away at I think it was a 65-year sentence. He reduced to like 23.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he died in TDC, though,
He
didn't
did.
he?
did.
He did.
He did.
2004.
Yeah.
And back in 80, what was it, 1980 something, Judge Pierce, he was actually fixing to get out of the federal system because he was calculating his time in Texas time to be a concurrent with his federal sentence, which meant ran at the same time.
Yeah, that's a good deal.
And when Judge Pierce found out about that, he looked at the original judgment, and it did say that, but it wasn't supposed to say that.
Oh, okay.
So he entered what they call a nunc-pro-tunc order, which meant was a clerical error in the original judgment, and he corrected that by a nunc-pro-tunc judgment, and he said that it was not concurrent, but it was consecutive, which meant his time for serving the state, Texas time, would come after he had finished serving his federal penitentiary time. So when he finished the federal penitentiary time, they shipped him to Texas, and he started serving that, I don't remember, life sentence? Was it a life sentence?
I think
99
it was.
years.
I think it was.
How much?
99. I thought it was 99 years.
99.
What's the difference?
it
That's
could-
like,
yeah.
might as well be. But yeah, so he had to come back here. But I bet he was not happy about that because he
I
would.
bet your father never received a Christmas card.
I bet he didn't. I bet he didn't. That makes me want to ask, Will, about Dad and that trial. So is there anything, because I do these stories, of course, because they're so interesting, but ultimately it's just because I enjoy learning more about my dad. So during that trial, do you remember anything about him, or was he afraid? Was there something in particular there you might share?
I wasn't in there. I think they had invoked the rule, Jerry.
What does that mean, invoke the rule?
I'm sure he did.
And
Defense
I
did.
was going to testify. In other words, if you're going to testify, you can't be in the courtroom while
Other
testimony's being given.
By anybody
Oh,
else.
yes,
And
right,
so
right.
I think I was probably prohibited from being in there.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So you weren't. Oh, okay, that's a good. So you didn't see that. Okay. Did he see? Okay. One of the things Jerry always says is something that is true about my dad would be very consistent.
Yeah.
So I'll say, well, how was he in the '60s? Okay, now we're talking about the '70s. How was it then? The '80s? He's like, it's just the same. Man. It's just the same. So
I mean,
is
that
very
case,
true.
for him trying that case wasn't any different than if he were trying a felony 4 or 3 theft case.
That's great.
It was
Yeah.
the same
That's
there
really-
as it was ever. I mean,
Yeah.
That's really true.
Yeah.
He was never at a loss. Never, never, had to gather his wits about him or anything. I mean, it was just right down the lane. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was very comfortable in his own skin.
I love that.
Yeah.
Wow.
He really was. I mean, and had the memory of an elephant. And one of the many things I always admired about him was that, and it was very envious of, is that memory, because I don't have anywhere. I got. I'm suffering from the same thing poor old Jerry is. Too many birthdays.
Too many birthdays.
But
Yeah.
but your dad could, and if someone, if a lawyer made an objection, and made reference to a previous answer or question or what, he could go back line by line by line, and quote the testimony that was given. I mean, you'd sit there with your chin on your chest. You couldn't believe what he was doing. But anyway,
Wow.
he was really amazing. He's very gifted and mentally, intellectually,
Yeah.
to be able to do what he did, the way he did it.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that made it real hard for me as a kid because I had a really good memory. But I do remember later in life, I felt so badly about being kind of a rebellious teenager. Do you remember me as a rebellious teenager? Say no.
No.
Good.
I mean, no.
But I felt no. Okay.
No.
No. Okay. Maybe that's for a
I just
different
remember
podcast.
you-
I'm sensing there might be more to say
I just
about that.
remember you singing too loud in church. That's
I
all.
did that? Oh no, I probably did. But I remember later, like in my 50s, before Dad passed, and I remember saying just very earnestly, "I am so sorry, Dad, that I caused
good
so many
grief.
problems. That I feel so bad." And you know what he said? He said, "Well, hon, I don't remember any of that."
He said what?
He said, "Well, hon, I don't remember any of that." Time had worked its magic, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, well,
He
that's
was very
great.
devoted
Oh.
to his family,
Yeah.
extremely so.
Yep.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's why again I'm doing this. Of course, I'm enjoying it. I get to connect with my old friends here
Yes.
and talk about some things that I hope interest everybody who's listening. But also, as always, I'm the judge's daughter, and he was my daddy, and that's why we're here. So I'm thinking our next story, as we kind of wind down, and I pour myself another glass of beer. I'm thinking the next story might be the story of Christian Oliver. So what do you think about that
Oh
one?
yeah. I heard that.
That was it. I didn't participate in anything. Jerry will remember.
Oh yeah, I remember that case very well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jerry will be your go-to source on that.
Okay, but then we're going to do another story that we were talking about, and that's the one about a murder that was on the SFA campus.
Yeah. Yes.
And you are connected to that one, or it's just something you
Yes.
knew about? Okay, you were.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we're going to do that one too. So, yeah, this is just going to go
That was
on
the-
and on.
That was the first murder case that Herbert tried when he was when he got here. And that's the first one I ever investigated or prepared for trial. And it was very, very, very tragic.
Yeah.
I mean, just really tragic.
Goodness.
And it's the only case I can remember where the defendant sat during the whole trial and was totally mute and wouldn't say anything to his lawyer, anything.
My goodness.
Yeah,
Okay, well, we are going to cover that
he was
story.
a strange one too.
Yeah, he
All right.
was.
Okay, well, we're going to be back for that. But for this story, shall we just have a little toast with
Yeah,
our
sure.
Dr. Pepper and our Mountain Dew for woohoo? Yes, we did. Let's do that. And so, as I like to say, subscribe, follow, and tap in to Untapped with M.E.
That you can get it right.
You're like this? Yeah, really is.
I came to the opening of the first one.
Yeah.
Well, the first one.
Filled with
Jack's
people.
a baby.
Yeah.
He's a pure baby.
That's right, a pure baby. You got it.